Welcome back to DAGryffyn Hobby. My name's Dave. Let's check out what's going on the layout expansion. I spent a couple days playing around with track plans. I have known generally where the track was going to go, but I wasn't really set on exactly where everything was going to fit. But what I did was I put the bridge in place, which is not there at the moment. And since that really can't move, I mean, it's not set yet. I can move it a little bit whichever way I need to. But as far as the rest of the table, that's what I can move the least. So I placed the bridge, and then I lined up the track on this side, trying different configurations until I got close enough to what I want. Once I figured that out, I knew essentially where it was going to be. I was able to cut the 2 layers of foam that will be supporting the track on top of the base. Now, I considered briefly using plywood and removing all this foam and supporting the track on a plywood sub-road bed. I have a bunch of old plywood in the garage, but nothing that was good enough to use and nothing that was big enough where I could get one cut to span the space. I wasn't going to do that on the back part, just this table. It's still a possibility, but probably unlikely now that I've started to cut the foam and I'm going to want to lay the track and the road bed, and I'm going to want to get it going. So I'll probably end up just sticking with the foam. So this evening I traced out the track and then I cut the foam and I glued the 2 pieces of the blue foam together with a silicone caulk, and it's been sitting out here for a while now with weights on it to kind of keep it compressed. I think we can remove the weights now and see what the track's going to look like. I probably should have cleaned them off before I put them up there. They're filthy. These weights just float around the garage getting used for projects like this. The pink foam is not yet secured to the table, and the blue foam is not secured to the pink, but it's solid enough that I can start, and if I need to, I can always remove the blue with the track attached to it. To support the bridge on this side over here, I just have a 1x4 screwed to the side of the table and just up at the right height. Once I'm a little closer to really setting that in place, I'll build a better brace over here. I've been very happy with the Menards track, but it's not perfect. But for the price, I also don't expect it to be. My last batch of straight pieces were not great. One of the rails was bent outwards, so when you rolled a car along it, it would fall into the gauge. So that's why I was just rolling this car along the rails to make sure that they were okay. The diameter for the inner loop across the entire layout is 0.42. When I got to this section over here, it just didn't look right to me. And it might be because I'm trying to get the tracks a little bit closer together on this portion, because I want it to look a little bit more like a dual track mainline. So instead of just using 0.42, I used a combination of 0.54 and 0.42. I've alternated the pieces, a 54, a 42, a 54, and a 42. And it doesn't end up exactly where I need it to be, so I'll have to cut that last piece to fit. One of the complaints about the Menards track that I've heard people say is that they don't fit tightly together. The batch I had for the layout that's already set, I don't think I had many problems with that. This batch of track, they are definitely loose. So if you're going to be using Menards tubular, I suggest you get yourself a pair of track pliers so you can squeeze the ends to reform them to the proper size. One of the things I use to help me place the track is a level. This is not a great level, but I'm not actually checking for level. I'm using it for its width. It helps me to make sure that the track is straight. I lay it down and I pull the track up to it so that all the ties rest against the level. That way I know it's nice and straight. But also I'm using it to help space between the tracks, which helps me not only ensure that both tracks are straight, but that they're at a consistent distance from each other. For the left side of the bridge, I'm using 042, 3 pieces here, and it looks like I'm going to need to cut a small piece to fit in between the curve and the straight on the bridge, because I don't want to pull this any closer to the front edge of the table. The outer loop is 54, but after those two 054s, I transition to 096, and that gives me a nice gentle approach to this turn. It would be great if I could use 96 everywhere, but that's just not going to work for this layout. So the outer loop just finishes the curve and will go straight back against the wall. And this side, I've got a bit of an S curve, but that's all right because it's 96. It's not going to be a problem. There's certainly tighter S curves on this layout elsewhere. So this will be a nice gradual swoop up to the turn, I think, as well. Of course, then it hits the 042, and that might be a little jarring, but there's really not much I can do about that. I've got my 3 Rails 4 Dads test box car here. This car predates their podcast. I weighted this up with a couple ounces of tire weights to use as a test for any of the track on the layout as I was laying it to make sure that it rolled nice. And I did accidentally send this boxcar off the layout, and I did chip the end of it, but that's okay. Once I got the stickers, I put the 3 Rails 4 Dads on one side and the Dadified sticker on the other. I mean, it was a Union Pacific boxcar anyway. That just made sense. I guess that means on any part of this layout, the first car to roll over it has been this one. There are a couple places on the layout where there's more space in between the 2 loops. This might be the greatest distance between the 2 tracks anywhere on the layout. But that's going to enable me to put some stuff in between, which is nice because that back loop, that outer loop, is going to kind of disappear behind whatever scenery is here before it goes back along the back wall. The front loop is going to come towards the front of the table with the 096, then straight track just about the edge of the table before it takes a little bit of a left turn and goes back to the main part of the layout. The grain elevator will probably stay relatively in that spot. The other buildings are going to go, I don't know, wherever they end up. Now, one of the reasons I'm using the 096 is out of necessity. I had planned on using the 054 exclusively on that part of the loop, but I also didn't take into account the height of the table and the height of the electric panel. When this layout comes down and I plan the next one, I'll move the electric panel, put it elsewhere in the garage so that it's not in my way. So I'm going to have to find a way to kind of camouflage it without blocking it, because I certainly don't want to block it. So I'm going to try to scenic around it. If I get a photo backdrop, maybe I will paste it to the front of the panel or just paint the door to resemble it. I don't know. It's unfortunate that I've got this big white box hovering over the layout, but nothing's perfect, and not much I can do about it right now. But the good thing is that I couldn't do 054. I had to use something else. So by using the 096, it brings the track far enough away from the wall so that it doesn't interfere with the box, yet still enables me to use the 54 so it turns where I need it to turn. So I'd say it actually worked out pretty well. This is one of the fake switches that I've cut. It pretty nicely lines up with the outside rail of any turn. And then I can add a siding for a boxcar or other freight cars. That's just a placeholder at the moment to suggest what I could do with this space. What I find exciting is how much space I have here on this table to do anything with. Since there's really not a good spot anywhere else on the layout for any sort of in-depth city or town scene, I guess that's what this is going to be. I mean, when I started out, I didn't want a big flat section on the layout, but after trying to squeeze town buildings into small cramped sections of the layout, I think this opens up the possibility to do a really, really neat city area. I cut this foam pretty wide. It's a foot wide. Doesn't need to be that wide, but I wanted to have enough space on each side that I could have some flexibility to the exact location of the track, but then also have something to carve down later once I kind of have a better idea of what's happening on the rest of the table. And because I use the foam, I also now have that flat section to the back right where I can do something at track height or carve that down and do something else with it. One of the reasons I wanted the table lower than the track in this section is so that I could do some roads that go under the track, whether it's a tunnel or, in this case, maybe a couple of girder bridges. What's really exciting about all this is just the possibility. I love starting a new layout because there's just no limit to what you can do with it. Adding this whole section is just really exciting to me, and I can't wait to make more progress. Well, that's the biggest passenger car I have. I should probably also check overhang on that inner turn there. Let's see, what's the biggest car that's going to run there? I don't normally run the K-line heavyweights on the inner track. I wonder how close it gets to another K-line heavyweight. It's pretty close. So maybe I need to reevaluate this turn here just in case. I don't know that 042 would work any better. It actually gets it closer to the other track. The other option, which I don't like, is moving this whole track further away, because then it doesn't line up with this track. It does give us more clearance though. I'm much more comfortable with that clearance. Maybe I need to play with a couple different combinations of track pieces here to see if I can get the turn the way I want it. Well, I guess I have enough play to make it work. I just have to make this track a little bit longer. I was going to cut it here, but if I cut it there, then, you know, it's close enough. And I end up with a little more clearance. I think after pulling the top part of the track back and then pulling this section forward, it will be good enough. It's not like it's track that has the roadbed on it where you don't have any flexibility at all. I can kind of push and pull this to fit how I want it to fit, whether or not geometrically it's supposed to work that way. So I think that's what I'll do. I'm happy with that. Let me go look at it on the other side of the bridge. The track has come a little bit this way, maybe an inch, and I think that's given me the clearance I need. And this whole track might be able to move to make up that difference without having to cut some ridiculously short piece to fit. I think I'm happy with this. I wish I had more time to work on this tonight, but I'm pretty content with how it's going. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on DAGryffyn Hobby.